welcome everyone. You are listening to Incorruptible Mass, where we are here to help you understand state politics. So we talk a lot about why it is so broken, what we could have here in Massachusetts if we fixed it, and how you can get involved. And today we are going to be talking about ballot questions. So in Massachusetts, in addition to voting for candidates on your elections November 8th, you will also have the opportunity to vote for specific ballot questions, which will put something into law by you, because it's a democracy. And there are at least 4 and up to 7 different ballot questions, depending on your district. So the Fair Share Amendment, the regulation on dental insurance, stuff about alcohol licenses, another about driver's licenses, one about Medicare for all, one about transparency, and one about community preservation acts. So we are going to go into each one of these and talk about them, and we hope to inspire you to canvass. So let me go ahead and introduce my co-host here. I will start off with Jordan Berg-Powers.
My name is Jordan Berg-Powers. I use he, him. I have several years experience in progressive politics, and thank you, Jonathan, for this t-shirt. And for those of you who can't see it, you should go to the YouTube page.
What a teaser. Jonathan Cohn.
Jonathan Cohn, kind of he, him, active kind of organizer for issue and electoral campaigns based out of Boston. Happy to be here. Shout out to Jordan's shirt as well.
And I am, of course, Anna Callahan, she, her, coming at you from Medford. Always super interested in state politics, local politics. Maybe I'll get back into national politics someday. But for now, super interested in state local. And today we are diving in to the ballot questions. So let's see, who wants to start off with question 1, the Fair Share Amendment? I am going to go ahead with Jonathan Cohn.
Okay.
Can you tell us just one sentence about what it is and then a little bit of background?
Yes. Okay. So what question 1 would do, so it's a 4% surtax on the portion of someone's annual taxable income over $1 million, which could raise about $2 billion each year in funding dedicated to public education and transportation in Massachusetts. What I always like when I'm kind of elaborating that, public education as an early education, kind of K-12 public schools and our public colleges and universities, transportation as in road repair, kind of upgrading structurally deficient bridges, and then hopefully getting us buses and trains that don't catch on fire, because we could aspire.
I like buses and trains that don't catch on fire.
Right? I
prefer those.
I prefer those. They're better.
And just to be super clear, if you don't make more than $1 million every year, no tax for you.
Exactly. It's like you pay nothing, you don't pay a penny more, and you can only benefit from the investments made. That sometimes I've joked that when talking about this, I'm channeling an inner Elizabeth Warren. If I say your first $1 million, nothing changes, and then it's just 4 pennies on the dollar for every dollar after that. And it's just as a way of kind of conceptualizing how much money that is. That would be around, if you'd be making about $20,000 each week in income, is what $1 million kind of in the year would be. And that's a lot of money.
Wow, 20,000 a week. I was thinking a month and I was like, that doesn't seem like that. I mean, it's a lot, right? 20,000 a week, 80,000, more than 80,000 bucks a month.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's about 0.6% of the entire population, or of the total taxpayers. So it's not even the top 1%.
Yep.
Fraction of the top 1% who would pay more. And as context is that Massachusetts currently has a flat income tax, right? So we know that in the federal government, we have a progressive tax structure where you never kind of pay less or you never kind of end up with less because of a tax rate as marginal taxes work, but it's higher rates at higher levels, knowing that those who have the most have the ability to give more, have the ability to chip in more, and they've also disproportionately benefited from everything kind of in the system. This would kind of, so currently in Massachusetts, because of that flat income tax rate, if you make $30,000 or $30 million, you pay the same income tax rate.
Yeah.
And even more kind of wilder is that according to like Mass Budget, when they did research and looking about what is the actual kind of tax burden impact felt by people from the combination of sales taxes, excise taxes, property taxes, and the income tax, and shows that the top 1% pays a lower effective tax rate than the rest of the population. And so that those who have the most are actually paying the least in terms of their total income, which is definitely out of whack in terms of kind of basic ideas of fairness.
Totally.
And so question one can help both get us a little bit kind of a step in the direction of a fairer system in that regard, while getting a dedicated funding source for the areas that really do need kind of ongoing investment, especially like needed before, especially needed as we're kind of slowly but surely coming out of the pandemic world. And you have the needs, like, especially if like, I often think about that with schools, where you saw a lot of these schools don't have HVAC systems that are appropriate.
That's right.
We have teacher shortages now, or counselor shortages. And we need to be able to have kind of reliable funding for that if we're going to actually meet the needs that exist.
Absolutely. I just want to chime in with a little note about all the people who think that Massachusetts is a progressive state. Like, it is deeply like not progressive or even fair to have a flat income tax. And that is in our Constitution, and it is a huge problem. And, you know, our legislature could make some efforts to change it, but they are not interested because they're not really progressive. So
I think it's I just want to say really quickly that like flat income tax sometimes can be confusing for folks. So I think the easiest way I think about it is most people in Massachusetts pay more taxes than rich people, just flat out, easy to put it. And if you're poor in this state, if you feel like it's Taxachusetts, because for you it is, you're paying the lion's share of the taxes in the state. Everything from your sales tax to all the fees we have, those are all regressive taxations. You know, all the time, all the like little nickel and diming, and people get frustrated with that. This is a way to right that ship just a little bit, not as much as anything all of us would like, but it's a way to say clearly a little bit more of our values.
Yeah, and I think that's a good thing to highlight of like how the way different taxes work, because income taxes are kind of, particularly let's say when graduated, are some like the most progressive taxes that we have, because if you don't rely on those for revenue, you end up typically relying on more regressive systems. Like, for instance, New Hampshire. New Hampshire doesn't have a state income tax, but that means that they have to rely disproportionately on taxes that really do shift the burden even more downwards. Same for Texas.
Yep. So how can people, this is really important. Oh, can somebody give a little bit of the history, right? So this, I know from talking to Jay Kaufman, who like basically entered office and he was like, we're going to get some kind of tax like this passed. And 24 years later, like it still wasn't, you know, we had to step down. It still hadn't been actually in fact passed, although steps had been made. So we're talking decades of work for this thing.
Yes.
So and I want to jump in? Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Jonathan. I'll just say really quickly, because I've been one of those people who's been around a long time for it. So famously at my job, I had a meeting about raising taxes the first week. It does predate, so there were other ballot initiatives that were attempted that Jay was a part of to try to get rid of wholesale the regressive income tax that failed. We also had act called the Act to Reinvest, which was a campaign underneath that Deval Patrick supported to raise the income rate back up to 5.95, but create a whole bunch of carve-outs that are geared towards helping regular people and poor people. Things like really raising the rent allowance, so that basically people, if you pay rent, you wouldn't see any tax raise. To allowing seniors and other folks to get tax things. It was a way to right the ship on the taxation rate and also to stop lowering it, which is something that happened despite it making no sense to lower it. And so the Act to Reinvest came before DeLeo and Terry Murray, the then Senate president, and they were like, you know, we're not going to do that. Screw you, all you activists who spent 2 years working on it, and Deval Patrick, who supports it. Instead, we're going to do a gas tax, increase the sales tax, and do a small tax on like technology that ended up being scrapped. So the only thing that stayed were the regressive taxation on regular people around gas tax and sales tax. And so while the gas tax and other things, we need the revenue, I think it's a reminder that the legislature could have not done that and could have done something more progressive, but chose instead to stay with leadership, because also no one in the state house wanted to do what the Senate president and the speaker wanted. Only 2 people wanted that in the whole state, and that's what we got.
Yeah, and then to give like a little bit of like the kind of more recent history. So what happened is kind of in response to seeing like, and as this was not having success through the legislature of getting stuff, a lot of the kind of ballot initiatives that come up in Massachusetts stem from the legislature not taking action on things themselves. And so back in 2015, the Raise Up Mass Coalition, which is of kind of faith, labor, and community groups in the state.
Huge coalition, really amazing, powerful, like great. The coalition's been around for a long time.
Yeah, and like so kind of the folks who did kind of the minimum wage increase fights, earned sick time, paid family medical leave, collected signatures around the state. I believe it was like over 150,000 collected to put it on the ballot and to do a constitutional amendment on the ballot. Because as you pointed out before, the Massachusetts Constitution built is where the flat tax kind of exists. Where you have to tax any one source of income can only be at one rate. So if you wanted to create a progressive tax structure, you either raise the rate for everyone and then do exemptions and carve outs and do like a back end style progressivism, or you amend the Constitution to allow for additional rates, or just as in this case one specific additional rate. That we collected signatures, and then for a constitutional amendment needs to go through 2 votes of the legislature, where we'd have to get at least 25%, and then it goes to the ballot. And we had 2 overwhelming votes of the legislature, kind of in that legislative session and the subsequent one. And then the corporate lobby in the state sued to get it kicked off the ballot, because folks who know that like the millionaires and billionaires who might have to pay slightly more in taxes didn't want that and would rather fund a lawsuit to prevent it from happening. And
spend millions to save billions. That's what they do.
Exactly. And so the Supreme Judicial Court, filled mainly with Baker appointees that year, ruled that it was by asking people to raise funds and how to kind of designate those funds, so that it was asking 2 separate questions and that it wasn't able to go to the ballot. Kind of the coalition came back, kind of regrouped, and then moved forward as a legislative kind of sponsored amendment, because in Massachusetts, whereas a citizen-driven ballot initiative can only ask 1 question, a legislative one can ask as many questions as they want. Why that different, like what the basis of that difference is, I don't know. But same text was refiled with Senator Jason Lewis of Winchester and Jim O'Day of West Boylston. Again, had its 2 votes of the legislature, and then is now finally on the ballot for 2022. So it's been a long way.
Yeah, this is what they do. It's like delay, anything to get the bill to not pass. So it was a bill. It was going to get, it was going to go through the pure citizen ballot initiative, and then they managed to kill that in a lawsuit, and then we had to start over. This is what happens over and over.
And just to your point, you can see as well, it's interesting when you see like some of the folks funding the opposition, like John Fish of Suffolk Construction, as well as Suffolk Construction Self, and Jim Davis of New Balance, Bob Kraft. You see these people donating like millions of dollars, or $500,000 or $100,000. And the fact that they have that much money lying around that they can donate easily, and to think that it's just like pocket change to fight a ballot initiative asking them to pay a little bit more, shows that they have so much more that they could contribute to having a better Commonwealth for all of us, and they're just hoarding it.
Okay, we got other ballot measures to talk about, but first I want people to know how they can get involved in this one. So Jonathan, can you give us some info?
Yes, so I'll have 2 pitches. One, go to fairshareoma.com is the campaign's website, where you can also find volunteer opportunities. On that site, we have opportunities to canvas, we have opportunities to phone bank, we have opportunities to do relational organizing with the app Reach, as well as other ways for you to plug in. I will make a pitch. If you live in kind of the western or northern part of Boston, or most of the western or northern parts of Boston, or live like just north of the city, you are probably in my region. And I would love to see you at one of the canvases my region has for that campaign. And you can find a list of our upcoming events at tinyurl.com/MetroNorthFSA. FSA as in Fair Share Amendment. It's a regularly updated spreadsheet with upcoming events in our region.
Fantastic. So we are going to go on. Let's talk quick about 2 and 3, and then we want to make sure to spend a little more time on question 4. But question 2, who wants to just describe what it says? Anybody want to jump in?
Yeah, question 2 is it looks the same as the regulations that we currently have through our local sort of Obamacare and Obamacare
On dental insurance, this is.
except around dental insurance. So it takes the same regulations we have for the private marketplace around health insurance and puts it onto the dental insurance. So currently, according to research, the large dental companies, Delta Dental as a perfect example, only spend anywhere from $5 to $7 of the money you give them to actual dental care. And the rest of it, they just pocket. And because this is a marketplace that's entirely unregulated by the government, there is no, there's no attempt to try to ensure that the money that you're spending through private insurance goes to actual care for your dental. And what's happening is dentists are having a hard time getting procedures covered. If you've recently tried to get something from your dentist and they say, yeah, come back next year, or we're not sure that'll get covered. That's bonkers, right? Like, these are basic procedures. I know myself, like, I had part of a procedure done and then they were like, come back in January, right? Like, that doesn't make sense for your mouth. And so this would put some semblance of control back into the system. It is, there's currently a TV ad that is a lie being promoted. I actually went into the Millman report about, they say like, oh, it could raise dental premiums by 30%. And like, what they're resting this theory on is that they will just do that themselves. Like, there's no reason for it. I was like, this is
the mafia, right?
Yeah, it's like, it's
just, money or will break into your house,
And I think that's an important thing to recognize, that that they're saying, if you do this, we will raise your rates. Yes. Like, this isn't just like the way the world works. It's you saying that you're like a predatory entity that is going to do that.
Yeah, they just the study is it's fantastic. If you're into reading studies, I suggest it, because it's just like, I was just like, what is this? This is not real. Like, this is ridiculous. So in reality, what it would do is it would put these things on. Has the controls worked in the private marketplace around Obamacare and Medicare? Like, mostly no, but there had effect. I think in the short term, for sure, it will. I think the way I think about it is, every time you put in a regulation, corporations find a way around it, but it doesn't mean you shouldn't put in the regulation. So, for the very least, it starts to, we start to put some boundaries on this dental insurance. Dentistry is something that's actually endangered. Not a lot of people going into dentistry. Dentists, like other people, have huge school debt, right? There's all sorts of ways that this is really unfair to regular people. And so we need to do something to tilt it back in the opposite direction. And I think this is at least a really good first step.
Great. So we're yes on 1, we're yes on everything. We're yes on 1, we're yes on 2.
Yeah.
Anything more to be said about this one? I feel like we can be quick over these middle ones.
I would love to see insurance companies lose. It's like, that's always a win when health insurance companies take a loss.
Because their only job is to make sure that whatever money you put in gets less of that gets out to you in care, and they take some of it. That's like literally the reason they exist.
Because that's like basically the premise of their opposition, is that they should not be limited in the amount of money that they can be going toward like profit
Their
trade
pockets.
admin, trade marketing, things that are not actually healthcare.
Exactly. Great. So yes on 1, yes on 2. Let's go on to number 3, which is just expanding alcohol licenses. And Jonathan, do you want to give us a little quick
I can
rundown?
give kind of a quick spiel with that. So the origins of question 3. So back 2 years ago, Cumberland Farms had tried to organize the ballot initiative to completely eliminate the cap that exists in Massachusetts for supermarkets and convenience stores to sell alcohol. And what they didn't get enough signatures to make the ballot. But seeing that, kind of what question 3 is the response from liquor stores to that, to forge a compromise proposal to get kind of Cumberland Farms and supermarkets to not eliminate the regulatory system entirely. So the way it works currently is that there are a certain number of licenses that a place like, let's say Whole Foods or Stop and Shop, that they can sell beer and wine at a certain number of their establishments. If it's at one place, that means it might not be at another. What question 3 would do is it would double over the series of a number of years the cap for beer and wine sales, so that from 9 to 18, and then but tighten the cap for sales of liquor. So it's something that it gives for those who want to have no cap at all. It gives a certain degree of like liberalization of that, but tightening it in a smaller area. Also changes the fee structure that kind of a supermarket, a convenience store, or a liquor store would face if they sell to somebody underage. That it's currently, if they get fined for that, the fine is assessed only on the percentage of their sales that are alcohol sales. If you are a liquor store, that is 100%, pretty close to 100%. If you are kind of a large supermarket, that is a small percentage of your total sales. That fine is meaningless to you. And so that creates this really perverse system where it's not actually a meaningful fine for larger entities, and something that would destroy a smaller one. And so it's kind of reevaluated to be a fine on total sales. So it's actually a meaningful deterrent for larger entities. It bans the use of self-checkout for alcohol, which I think is both good from the perspective of making sure that you're not like selling to kind of to those underage, but also good from the labor perspective. Self-checkout is bad.
Yep.
Also allows for the use of out-of-state IDs for purchasing alcohol, which is something that most other states allow, but for whatever reason Massachusetts doesn't. And it's something that it's kind of like a good faith intended compromise that like where like neither of the like economic interests get like their ideal situation, and but it also helps benefit like the smaller entities vis-a-vis the larger entities compared to what would happen if the cap was eliminated entirely.
Yep. It seems like,
yeah,
why not?
Yeah, exactly.
It's
a decent measure. It's not like the same grand stakes as in with some other questions, but it's a sensible proposal. But yes,
it's one of those things where it's like both. If we, I think we said before we started recording, like if we had a functioning legislature, it should be easy to pass.
Yeah,
it's already a compromise. And second, like I'm like, yeah, it seems fine. Like
yeah,
I'm sort of like just as much a yes on 3 because it makes it easy, yes on everything, as I am passionate about yes on 3.
Yeah,
totally. And in that spirit, we're not going to spend any more time on it because whatever. Okay, question 4. This is the other big one. Question 1, question 4 are the ones that we want you guys to take away from this podcast. And Jordan, I'm going to ask you if you will give us like the one sentence, what does question 4 do? And then a little bit more of the history in the background.
So question 4 would say yes to a bill that's already passed that allows everybody access to driver's licenses regardless of their legal status. So if I think we think of it really simply that like if you're driving on the road and you regularly drive in Massachusetts on the road, we should know who you are. That benefits everybody. For people who care deeply about other people, for undocumented folks, this gets them out of the systems that they often get wrapped in to get deported, which is driving illegally or driving without a license. It's also safer. So there's this perverse thing that people who hate other people will say, oh, well, like, look, these people are causing trouble. But like, if somebody is driving if somebody's driving and causes an accident, why would you want them to not know? Why would you want to not know who they are? Like, it doesn't make any sense to say that they're dangerous, but also they should continue to be dangerous and we have no idea and have no regulations over them. Like, it's just bonkers logic. It's just based on hatred of other people. So, I think this is a really important bill. It's a really important ballot initiative. And for me, it's as important, if not more important than question one. Not that question one wouldn't have an impact that's outsized, but rather question four really says who we are as a state. Whereas question one, I sort of feel like it needs work to pass, but should be okay. But question four really says, like, who are we?
Yeah, and I happen to know from talking to folks that, like, question four, so this concept of allowing everyone who drives to have a driver's license has been in the works for 20 years. Like a bill for 18, I believe, and like real work, people getting, lawyers getting paid, like, activists and people who run organizations, giant coalitions, like coming together, like hundreds and thousands, maybe millions of people hours being spent on this decade after decade. And it did pass through the legislature. So the bill is passed. So this effort is an effort to like rescind a bill that has already passed. So that's one thing to remember. The other thing to remember is, like, it's weird because they phrased it in a weird way. Like, you have to vote yes.
Exactly. And I was going to tag in with that because the way that what I remind people of is, if you remember back in 2018, when the opponents of the trans accommodations bill forced a referendum on that, the way that when such a referendum works is that it's the people get to vote on the bill. So when you think about it kind of that way, it's like the people vote because the opponents don't want it, the public gets to vote. So you vote yes to protect the bill. Because we had to do then, but that's also kind of the annoying thing with ballot initiatives when you have to actually, like, when they require the extra work of explaining what the yes means and what the no means, because it can be sometimes difficult. And what's particularly kind of appalling to me, I think, with the no on question four folks who put question four on the ballot in the first place, is how it's just based on irrational knee-jerk hatred and xenophobia. That, like, we are all better off when everybody who is driving has a license and insurance. That should be an inarguable point, because there is no example where we are better off because of somebody driving without a license and insurance. And people will always be, and as long as people need to get to work, to school, to the hospital, to the doctor, to the many other places, they will end up driving, because we do not yet live in a state where you can take public transit to every possible place or walk to every possible place. That is not reality. I would love for that to be reality in some future. It is not our current reality. And so it's it's kind of sensible measure. It is good for economic mobility for people so that kind of families can actually get to places that they need to, and it's good for public safety. And it's just disappointing when you see anybody just try to like fearmonger about immigrants because of it, as the state Republican Party has so often done.
Yep. So this is for us a strong yes on four. It's really important. It's been, a ton of work for a ton of people for a very long time. We're talking about something that is basically for for being able to drive safely on the roads.
Yeah.
And I know that for a few years back, there was a big, like a lot of people were very concerned about families being separated.
Mm-hmm.
And, this is one of the ways that families are separated right here in Massachusetts. Mm-hmm. So if you care about families, about kids being separated from their mothers, being separated from their fathers, like this is that issue. Mm-hmm. This is the place where we can prevent families from being separated. Right here in our progressive state of Massachusetts, mm-hmm. supposedly progressive, we are still separating families because of driver's licenses, which seems like, because, there's no way to get a driver's license to, if you know, even if you need to drive your kid to school or you need to drive to work, you know, and these are the ways that people get caught up in the system, and that these things that we in Massachusetts very clearly do not want people to be separated from their families. This is the way that that's happening. So voting yes on 4 is a solution to many, many problems that I think it's pretty clear that people in Massachusetts care about.
And I think it's important to note, like, you know, most, there are 17 states that already do this, of which, you know, Vermont, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Delaware, right? These are our neighbors. They already do this. And then on top of that, there are red states that do this. You know, Utah does this. There is no reason to be inhumane to other people. It makes no sense to do anything but say yes on this, unless you just really hate people. That's it. That's the only reason, right? Like, it's not dangerous. It's not even new. It's not unheard of. This has been happening for 20 years around the country. And we already provide driver's licenses to immigrants. People, you know, if you come to America and you're a student, you get a driver's license, right? Like, we already do this. It's not, you know, all the things all the fear mongering, everything else can just be boiled down to hatred of the other.
So how can people volunteer for yes on 4?
Let me confirm.
First, they can volunteer with Jonathan.
Yeah, I'll shout out myself that if you're coming to one of the yes on 1 canvases that exist in my region, we can enable you to ID voters for both yes on 1 and yes on 4, which is because the 2 campaigns, despite having a lot of overlap in the people supporting them, can't directly coordinate because of for campaign finance reasons between their committees. But since we're doing our work as Progressive Mass for those, we are enabled to allow people to ID for multiple questions. So again, tinyurl.com/MetroNorthFSA. We are happy to provide you with materials for both. You can also go to saferroadsma.com, which is the campaign's website, where you can find volunteer events. It can also donate.
Amazing. Okay, so those are all of the ballot measures that we know are going to be on your ballot. Yes, you, person listening to this right now, those are going to be on your ballot November 8th. And there are 3 other ballot measures that, depending on what district you live in, may or may not be on your ballot. So we're going to talk a little bit about those. The first one we'll talk about is Medicare for All. So this is essentially the Bernie version. Like, if you think about all the different versions people talked about in the 2020 primaries, there's like Medicare for All who want it. There was Medicare for All such and such and this and that. But this is sort of the actual Medicare covering people of all ages as the single insurance in the state of Massachusetts, without private insurance being around to muck it up. So who wants to jump in, give any sort of history, or, oh, and by the way, this is it is non-binding. So let's say a little bit about what non-binding ballot measures do. When you have questions 1, 2, 3, or 4, if those pass, that is the law of the land. Your vote determines the law. But with non-binding ballot measures, it really doesn't change the law. Even if every single district had it on there, even if every single district voted, 98% in favor, it would still not change the law. It is simply something that gives voice to your district and informs your legislator and everybody else that it has majority support in your district if it does, or that it doesn't. And the reason why things like question 5 and question 6, like the Medicare for All and transparency ballot measures, are on the ballot is because it helps for organizations that are trying to get these passed through the legislature. It helps for them to say, guess what? Your constituents already passed this. We know they want it. Why are you not voting for it? Why are you not, taking various actions, joining the caucus for it? There are a variety of things that legislators can do, and it helps to sort of turn those knobs for these organizations that are that are trying to move those bills forward. So with Medicare for All, the organization, in case you're curious, is Mass Care. They're great. They've been trying to get Medicare for All passed in Massachusetts for many, many years. They have in many previous cycles had these non-binding ballot measures, never in every district. So this time, I think it's in 20 some odd districts that it is on the ballot. And I'll pause here, see if anybody else has stuff to add about this particular ballot measure.
I'll just note that if you want to see if your district is included, you can go to masscare.org/2022 ballot, which lists all of the districts that this exists. And it's a simple question. One thing that we've often seen with something like Medicare for All of single payer is that there is, when you explain it in kind of basic terms, the public does support it. People understand kind of a concept of that you should not go bankrupt because of medical bills, that you should be able to go to the doctor without having to deal with the labyrinthine kind of nature that insurance can often be. However, you both need to strengthen that public support, which this is helping to do, and to kind of raise public awareness and show that to legislators when there's a lot of kind of entrenched interest in the current system, because there are people who will make a lot of money from kind of our system of health insurance and healthcare broadly. That creates a lock-in effect, where it's easier to preserve that system and tinker around the edges than it is to step back and ask if the system is even delivering on what we say it is.
Absolutely.
Shout out to our earlier Medicare for All podcast you could find on Incorruptible. We dig into this, and I think it's a fantastic episode.
Oh man. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, because in that episode you will hear about the legislature like totally illegally like tanking Medicare for All in a previous version. I mean, it is crazy. Go back and listen to that story. It is crazy to hear what the legislature did in order to not pass Medicare for All when it was clearly going to pass. Whew. Great. Anything else on Medicare for All? I think it's a pretty clear, absolutely yes. If you're in a district like that, vote yes for sure. I'm gonna jump in on the next one, which we believe will be question 6. We're not totally sure what the numbers are going to be on these because it depends whether your district has it or not. That question, probably 6, is a transparency question. And this is put forward by Act on Mass, which has amazing work around this issue. The question is, shall the representative for this district be instructed to vote in favor of changes to the applicable House of Representatives rules to make each legislator's vote in that body's legislative committees publicly available on the legislator's website? And man, we have talked so much. If you listen to this podcast and you don't know what we're talking about, you haven't been paying attention, right? But this is like a very important particular way in which Massachusetts, again, totally not progressive, not small d democratic compared to other states, that the fact that we can't even know how people are voting and our own legislators are voting is like absurd. And I'm going to pass it on to anybody. And maybe Jordan, do you want to jump in a little bit on why this question is important?
Yeah, I guess I'll just say, for me, I want to say that this is important because legislators will continue to feel pressure about these issues. And so it's really important that you show up, turn the ballot over, vote on these, maybe even the second ballot. I don't know how far now it's going to go, maybe the second ballot, but turn it over, read it, make sure that you're voting yes on this. So question 6, again, is just about transparency in the State House. But more importantly, it's a real signal to your legislator to say they think of themselves as only accountable to the speaker and to the State House culture. And this is a way to turn that around and say, no, you're actually accountable to us. You may not have an opponent, likely you don't, but we do care about this, and this is important. It's similarly for for the Medicare for All. The legislature has passed bill after bill to quote unquote put control on our healthcare spending. And instead, we have seen consolidation of hospitals, the complete mismanagement of our systems. Anybody who's tried to get healthcare in Massachusetts, except for maybe the ultra rich, knows how terrible this system is, how long you have to wait. I will say for myself, just again, this sort of funny story. I called the doctor's office for a procedure, and they said, do you have time in this? I said yes. They said, can you do this thing? They called me and said, you haven't called us to schedule this thing. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I didn't know how to schedule it. So I was like, they're like, it's really important that you call us immediately. We need to get you in as soon as possible for this procedure. And I was like, oh, okay. They're like, the earliest time we have is 6 weeks from now. So, right, again. So something that doesn't need to be at a hospital. So I just think these are two ballot initiatives that are just a way to tell the legislature to get your butt in gear and act according to what people want to do.
Your comments about the healthcare system just reminds me of a quote I always liked from Don Berwick back in 2014 in his campaign, where we talk about both, that's true of like the healthcare system, but as well as many systems. Government is how every system is perfectly designed for the results it gets.
Yeah.
And I think it's always important to think about the healthcare system as that way, is that like, as long as good health is not like the ultimate goal of how our healthcare system is designed, that will not be the outcome.
Yep.
Because the outcome is profit. The system is designed for the goal of profit. It will be good at producing profits. It will not be good at producing health, because those are not the same goal.
Absolutely. Anything else on transparency?
For transparency, it's basic committee, but like it just seems like something that like, it's always wild to me when you'll see legislators argue against it, that most other states already post the votes that they take in committee on their website. It's an easy thing to do. It's just like kind of a good faith effort to the public to show that what we're doing isn't behind closed doors. You should be able to see what we're doing, what we're choosing to advance, what we're not choosing to advance, so that you can ask us why, as like democracy should entail.
Indeed. And if you want to volunteer, you can go to Act on Mass, actonmass.org/the-campaign, but really you can just go to actonmass.org to find that information. And then the final of all of these questions is one about community preservation acts. And I know, Jordan, you explained this a little bit earlier. If you want to go ahead into a little bit about what these do.
Yeah, so the Community Preservation Act is a small tax on your property tax, very tiny, that increases money for the affordable housing, for like beautification in your town. So if your parks, beautification that's specifically about parks and like green space, tree planting, things that are green by nature, and also historical preservation. So the sorts of things that get left behind in most city budgets that are tight. This puts a little bit of money aside to ensure that there's money for these critical things. In towns that they have them, they have been a lifesaver to, they are the places that affordable housing and historical preservation, the money for that often comes from this, right? It's really hard to get money from the government for these things, from your city councilors. They're if they're thinking about, they'll always increase the money for police. They'll always, they'll sort of like try to put some more money for education. There's just never money for more trees or more affordable housing, and this does that. And so if you get a chance to do community preservation, please do. And if you're unsure, like how's it affect, ask the folks in other towns who have it. Every single place who has it, it's universally beloved. Like it's one of those weird policies that crosses political spectrum, and people just love it.
That is so nice to hear. Vote for question 7-ish or whatever it's called, maybe 5, maybe 6, maybe 7, because everybody loves it. As soon as you get it passed, people will be really happy about it.
No, it's like to quote the 2009 campaign by Northern Irish alternative rock band Snow Patrol, just say yes.
Yes to all. 4, maybe 5, maybe 6, maybe 7.
That's right. So here's the summary of today is just vote yes, keep voting yes, vote yes, 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 yes. And if you can canvass for any of these efforts, I got to tell you, I was canvassing last weekend. Jonathan was canvassing like 500 times last weekend. He manages to clone himself and go to many different cities. I don't know how he does it, but He is most canvassed award. And all of us, all three of us do a lot of canvassing. And I have to say, canvassing this weekend was so lovely. You're outdoors in the sunshine. It's a beautiful time. There's trees like with beautiful colors, and it's like leaf peeping at the same time. You get to talk to people.
I was just about to say that, like, I have a great suggestion for people who want to go to leaf peeping. It's closer than New Hampshire. It's closer than Vermont. It's called your own community or an adjacent one, and canvassing for questions 1 and 4 while walking through leaf. Oh my God.
Yeah, it's healthy for you. Like you'll go home, you'll sleep well. Like it is really wonderful.
Good exercise.
It's good exercise. It's good for your soul. It's good for democracy. It's good for your community. You will be happy afterwards. So hopefully I made a good pitch.
It's like your body gets exercise, and you're like the democratic muscle gets exercise as well.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, everybody. We hope to see you all on the campaign trail for all these ballot questions, and we'll talk to you all next week.